Today's is a very important feast. We celebrate Saints Peter and Paul, apostles. Our illustration shows them with their attributes. Saint Peter is often represented with the keys of bonding or liberating from sin. Saint Paul has the attribute of the gospel book which he proclaimed, and the sword, the means of his martyrdom. But who is at the center of this feast? And where is this center? There are several surprises awaiting us in this celebration. First, that seemingly we celebrate the work of the apostles and the specific task of their mandate to continue Christ's work together with the faithful. It is true. But the real center of this feast is Christ himself, who is the source of the ministry of the Church. We celebrate him who gave his Church authority and mission, orientation and goal. So we can see the source, mission, orientation and goal. This feast, while highlighting the works of Peter and Paul, is a reminder that no one can give himself or herself the mandate and the mission to proclaim the gospel. If someone just starts proclaiming the gospel on its own, detached from any other source, that's not a genuine mission. Mission is always given from Christ through the Church, and it is always part of the life of the Christian community. The second surprise is perhaps that the apostles formed a family, or in other words, a college, a fellowship. They worked always as a community. They were well-respected people wherever they worked, but they always connected to the 12, to one another. Even if we highlight the role of Peter as the head of this college, today's feast highlights their cooperation. And the same is true about their successors. Peter's successor is called the Pope, or the Bishop of Rome. The apostles' successors are the bishops, like our Bishop Jonathan. Their cooperation is at the center. They form a fellowship, a family of responsibility, co-responsibility. The Pope, who is the Bishop of Rome and Peter's successor, is the perpetual and visible source and foundation of the unity of both, the unity of the bishops and the whole company of the faithful. Again, it's not about individual prestige or power, but the service to the community. There's a visible sign of unity. So again, it is the life of the Church which is at the center. Superficially, it is so easy to focus on the Pope, the richness of their buildings, the prestige of the Roman Catholic Church, or the power of the Pope. But these are only externals. He is the sign of the unity of their people. Everything else is only the surface. So no surprise that today we celebrate our call to be united with Christ, who is the source of mission, who gives goal and purpose to the Church's life, who is the only source of our faith. So we can see how the balance gets right. In the Church calendar is the celebration of two powerful, the two most important apostles. But in reality, it is the celebration of the unity of the Church. Our unity with its life-giving teaching and with its very source, the risen Lord. And there is a further surprise. Where is the center, the life center of today's celebration? The surprise is that it is never the Church in general. It is where our daily work and witnessing to the unity of the universal Church is taking place, here at the local church. Today's feast, paradoxically, is the celebration of our local life and mission. We celebrate St. Peter and Paul, but don't forget that Peter and Paul worked and died among the local people. They suffered martyrdom in one of the local churches. I do think that it entails that we are responsible, all of us are responsible for the unity of the Church at local level, here at St. Augustine's, or our next door neighbor church at St. Margaret's or Clitheroe, or St. Matthias, St. Alphege. Every local Christian community and individual Christians are responsible for the unity of the Church. Part of this is learning about our faith. That's why in every newsletter I tend to put part what I call our parish catechism. Today it is exactly about the role of Peter and the other apostles. Part of this witness to the unity of the Church is our practicing prayer. Not only praying individually, but praying together. And this is what exactly is happening on every Sunday service. Learning about our faith and praying together are two important instruments of the unity of the Church. But the local churches are privileged places in a special and surprising sense. And this is what I'd like to highlight. Today's feast made me understand something which I did not really understand up until now, like in last week's homily. Last week, perhaps I mentioned something that it's a bit painful that when something is wrong going on in our world or local culture, like assisted dying, I would expect personally, but that's my taste, a public statement from our bishops speaking up from power, talking to power from a position of power, and there's always a silence. Perhaps it's not a problem, and this is the surprising meaning of today's feast. When we see that something is not going well in our world, or when we face that certain things are going badly in our local society, even in our neighborhood, things can be reversed and healed starting from here. On today's feast we realize that as individual Christians we are in the position that we are free to speak up, to share our opinions, to pray together, to search the truth, and perhaps when we come to a conclusion, to share the truth and to confirm each other in the truth. So, when the government is planning to raise taxes again, why? Because they have to finance the investment into the defense of this country, spending billions of pounds or dollars or forints, rubles, on defending ourselves from non-existing enemies. But you can see how wonderful it is that it is only the Christian community, the local Christian person, who can say, but let's pause for a minute. I don't see China and Chinese people as an enemy. What I see, that Eastern people, like many others, but I'm highlighting now Chinese people are the most hard-working people in this country. Go to a shop or the local Chinese business, the local takeaway. They are from 7 o'clock in the morning, and they serve food till 9:30 in the evening. So there is no enemy, and Christians can recognize it. They are only neighbors and images of God. Paradoxically, we tend to look up to higher authorities and find a solution from them. But today's feast of St. Peter's and St. Paul invite us that we have the freedom and the right viewpoint as you live in this real world. The politician in a privileged position will never see the genuine struggle of actual people. Not mentioning the spiritual struggles of Christians when we see these contradictions, when we see how a whole culture can seduced and hijacked by the devil. Every arm which we produce, sooner or later, will be used and kill someone. But that's not the point of today's feast. May this feast be a celebration of our local mission, and let it be a celebration that this year again we have a confirmation and the first communion of Naila and other relations from our community. Let this feast be a beginning when we invite people back to their church families, because something important is happening, because something life-giving is taking place here through your presence and work, because something wonderful happens to us and our society. We know what to heal, and Christ, if we are humble, is going to teach us how to heal. Here, in our churches, marked and inspired by the work of the apostles and the work of each other.